All right, we're live. What's up, guys? What is up? Welcome back to Deck Talk Podcast. We have a show and a half for you today. It is going to be phenomenal. Norman and I have been stoked as soon as we were able to put this gentleman in on our calendar to have him come on the podcast, guys. But if you don't know, I am Colin Burnett.
And I'm normally, guys. Yeah, that's right, Colin. We are really, really ready to rock and roll this episode. But you know what? First, we have to talk about one of our sponsors for tonight's episode. This episode is brought to you by YOLO Tech. You know what? You never know when it's going to happen. The fish of a lifetime comes up out of nowhere and just destroys your bait. You'll never miss another memory making moment with YOLO Tech. No more wasting time changing batteries in your camera. Capture your memories, capture every moment with YOLO Tech. Always be recording. Click the link in the description of this episode. Don't forget, use that discount code DECKTALK10. Again, don't forget, click that link in the description of this video. Use that discount code DECKTALK10. Man, you are right 100%, Colin. We have a heck of a show, and we are super excited. Guys, get ready for a fun episode. But here we go. Let's get started on this. Let's introduce this man, which you probably already see right in the center of your screen there. But anyway, he is one of the most well-known personalities in the world of fishing. He has a career that has spanned over 50 years. Just a few of his professional tournament stats include 2 wins, 3 seconds, 47 top 10s, 15 Bassmaster Classic appearances, and holds 2 BASS Angler of the Year titles. In 2002, he was inducted into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. Plus, he has produced and hosts one of the most popular outdoor television shows of all time, Jimmy Houston Outdoors, the iconic, the legendary Mr. Jimmy Houston.
Hey
So
guys,
What's going on,
hey
man?
guys.
thank you for coming on, brother.
I didn't tell you all this, but I need to be paid for this. But I'll take that in Little Debbie's.
All right, all
I'm
right.
just saying.
I might be able to. I might be able to hand deliver them to you.
We did find out Jimmy is a Little Debbie fan.
Yeah. He told us prior to that he's probably paid my salary a couple times with Little Debbie. So,
Many times over, Colin. Many times over.
so, so, Mr. Jimmy, let's talk a little bit before we get really started. We want to ask you, how is Miss Chris doing? And kind of get a little update on her, if that's all right.
Chris is doing better all the time. Chris had that stroke 33 months ago, which is almost 3 years. It
Yeah,
honestly seems just like it was yesterday, and yet it seems like it was 100 years ago. But she's doing really, really well.
good.
When you realize that when I met with the doctor that morning, the next morning after she had her stroke, I'd driven to Alabama and turned around and drove back. I drove 22 and a half straight hours. I was about an hour away from Birmingham when Sherry called and told me what had happened. I got back at 4:30 the next morning to the hospital and met with the doctor about 7:30, and he told me she would probably never leave that hospital alive. So we're so blessed and
Yeah.
so thankful that the doctor. And I told the doctor, I said, I don't see God written on your name tag. It made me a little
Mm-mm.
bit mad when he said that, and I'm sure he was just didn't have very good bedside manners. I guess I don't know why he would
Right.
say something like that, but anyway, she still can't walk, still can't use her right arm, but she's talking really well. I don't understand everything she said. She might say 2 or 3 sentences perfectly and then leave a word out and not be able to get it back in
Right.
her mind. But she's getting close to being able to walk, and she walks, but they have to have a little bit of help for her to walk because
Right.
she has a hard time keeping her balance. But she's much improved and
Great.
improving all the time. And she's here with me full time at the ranch, and we're extremely blessed. That's just all there is.
Yes. Well, I I had a daughter. My daughter passed away when she was 14, but she was born with brain damage, and the doctors told us that she would not make it to be one. And I kind of told them the same thing what you did. I don't see God on your name tag or anything
Right.
like that. But I told him, I said, well, I know somebody. I said, you do this as you practice. That's why they say medicine is a practice. You keep
Yeah,
on
that's true.
practicing and learning. I said, I know somebody that does it as a profession. And
Correct.
he gave us 14 years with my daughter.
Yeah.
And so I never take to heart really what doctors can say because they don't know. There's no, uh, they don't know how long or anything like that. They can just guess. And so,
You know, I just got Patsy just brought her mail down here. We actually live 2.7 miles from our front gate, and so we're really down in the boonies in the Arbuckle Mountains here in Oklahoma. Patsy just brought our mail down. I had a box in there, and I opened the box up, and there was a sweatshirt in there, and the sweatshirt was from Lynn White, who's one of the previous owners of Lucky Strike Lure Company, and it had a cross on it on the front of the T-shirt, and it said, "I can't, but I know a guy."
yeah,
And that's
that's
just exactly
awesome.
what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
It
I
is.
can't. There's so many things well, there's not a whole lot I can do, but there's a whole lot of things I can't do. But I do know a guy, and that's very very important.
That
Nice.
is. And let's talk more about your faith because I've got To Catch a Better Life. This is actually the second book because I have my little dog. Well, he's not little anymore, but when he was a puppy, the first one that I got, he thought that it was a chew toy. So uh, he,
They This is the one I do the daily devotionals out of right here. Look at this
yeah.
one. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, look at that thing, and that's my lab Benelli when she was a little bit younger. She's just a year old now, so
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. I
So,
had, you mentioned our dear Lucy. Lucy actually ate a Bible one time. She would come in the house all the time through the dog door, and Lucy actually ate one of our Bibles. And I told people that that's the only deer in the world maybe that has a Word of God in her. Has a Word of God in her. And she
yeah.
also, the other thing, which she destroyed the Bible. I mean, she just ate pretty much all of that. But she ate a check that I got at I think it was an FLW tournament on Grand Lake in Oklahoma, third place check, $30,000, and she ate $15,000 worth of it. Unfortunately, she didn't eat it all. You hear about kids saying that the dog ate their homework. That
right.
could actually happen. That's a pretty good excuse when you really get down to it. If you
Right.
have a
It
pet
is.
deer, you can just feed that your homework. I guarantee you
Oh
that.
man.
Well, we actually have a friend of ours that's on the live chat that you will know. Her name is Jen Muse, and she says, "Hey Jimmy, go Huskers." So she says that she knows that you love them Huskers.
Yeah, I love the
There you
Huskers.
go.
We used to beat up on those Huskers pretty good when they was in the Big Eight and the Big 12 conference, and we actually have some games scheduled with the Corn Huskers. The Huskers won a big basketball game though. I think last night or night before last.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
they
did.
did.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
We sent. We did send Nebraska. We did send Nebraska a good softball pitcher. We're really into Oklahoma University big time. I'm good friends with the athletic director and the coaches down there and most of the players. And if they like to fish, they like to be my friend. And so we attend a lot of the events at the University of Oklahoma, and we're big into the softball program at Oklahoma. And we did send Nebraska back up a pitcher that was from Nebraska that came down here to win a national championship, and she won that last year, and so went back to help Nebraska this year, and she's a good one. So Nebraska's going to have a good girls softball program too.
yeah.
Football program, I don't think they like to talk about that too
Nah,
much.
Not
not too
lately.
terribly much.
Not lately.
So,
So we'll see.
but we want to talk to you about like how has your faith in God been able to kind of help you through your career and your life and stuff like that? Had because we know that it's a big part of your life, and we want it to shine just as much, if not more, than really talking about your career because that is a main thing that you really don't see anymore from a lot of people. And you're very vocal and on social media and everything else like that about your faith. So, how has your faith helped you out?
Well, I grew up in church. I grew up in a Baptist church. My dad was a deacon, and I'm a deacon. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, and every time they were open the church doors, I was there. So I grew up in church. I don't never known anything all of my life but church, and so I got so saved at a very young age, I've lived that my entire life. Which has been a long and good life. There's absolutely no doubt about that. With life has lots and lots of ups and downs, and we've been very successful at quite a few things. We've failed at quite a few things, and we've had some situations in our business career where a couple of situations where individuals that worked in our company stole a lot of money from our company, like
Right.
$300,000 plus, which
Mm,
absolutely wrecks a small company like ours. And when you have things like that happen, from a business standpoint, it puts you on your knees, and it just if you don't know how you're going to be able to actually make it next week, how are we going to make it next week?
right.
Even it's not like business is tough or business is going to be hard or we're going to have to work extra. It's like how are we going to even make it next week? But God's carried me through all of that, anytime I have any time of situation that is difficult, or even if it's not difficult, it's just an ordinary situation. I talk to God about it. I include
Yeah.
God in everything that we do, and He's never failed yet. And it's not always been smooth and easy. The road's been rocky at times, but we come out of those bad situations, and you know wake up 3 or 4 5 years later, which 5 years happens in a heartbeat, seems like anymore,
Yeah.
and we'd be twice as well off as we were, and that's just happened, over and over and over. So when we get in these really difficult situations that we've been in, and we're in a battle right now. There's no doubt about it with Chris's with that stroke, and when we get in those situations, that's when the trust and the faith and the belief becomes even stronger because it's what you got. It's your only hope,
Yeah.
really. When a doctor says she probably won't leave this hospital alive, you don't really have hope in the doctor or the machines that she's hooked
Right.
up to, and the staff and all of that kind of stuff. A great medical center we was at. Your hope is just in Jesus. That's it.
Yeah.
And so when you have a few situations in your life, and that's why it's really and truly, honestly, I think a little bit more difficult for young Christians. They don't have that experience. They have to have God really step in and do miracles in their life
Right.
before they can really realize how big a God they've given their life to, and how big a God they serve. But once you've had that happen a few times, these situations that turn bad, you just expect something to happen really good out of it,
Right.
and sometimes you're shocked or you're surprised that it didn't happen faster, it didn't happen quicker, it wasn't even better, it didn't have a better outcome. And the deal with Chris right now, like I said, it's 33 months. I am honestly um, surprised, not shocked, but surprised that God hadn't completely healed her by now. I
Yeah.
know He will, and I know He's doing that.
Yeah.
But I felt like, and I know that God will do that on His time, not mine. I mean, I don't
Right.
His timetable. He does, but I honestly believe that by now, instead of being really doing well like she's doing, she'd be walking in back out in the boat with me fishing and going down on the dock and fishing in 30 minutes or something every day. And
Right.
but she's not, it's been a trial. It's been something that I'm not definitely was not strong enough to go through. Didn't have the strength, didn't have the patience. But when I found out in going through this and taking care of Chris, really what I needed, I just simply again did what I always do, and is go to God, and I could give you example after example after example in business and tournaments and
Right.
relationships and all kinds of things. But just go to God and say, here's where I am and here's what I need. And
Yeah.
I just did a video the other day on the last Sunday, as a matter of fact, just a few days ago, talking about depression. And I don't really know where I'm certainly no psychologist. I don't think in college I ever took one psychology class, and if I did, I can't remember it.
Right.
But I'm no psychologist, but I could see in taking care of Chris, bits of depression sinking into my life, and it was like God had a trigger there and says, "Hey, you need some things that to get through this that you can't handle on your own." And
Right.
one was strength, and one was patience. And no matter what we're doing in life, we need those two. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have a major situation like what you talked about with your daughter or what I'm going through with Chris. You don't have to have that to need strength. You don't have to have that to need patience. And the Bible tells us that patience is a virtue. And honestly, I never prayed for patience all my life because I was
Mhm.
afraid God would give it to me.
Yeah,
And I didn't want that. I mean,
I was
I
always
want to catch
told, don't
unlimited
pray for.
135 casts in a tournament, and I mean, I didn't want patience, but then I realized in this situation, I had to have a lot of patience if I was
Yeah,
going to be the kind of husband that God intended me to be, and I was going to be the kind of man to take care of her like I really should, and
right,
I needed patience, I needed strength, and I just simply asked God for it, and I continually ask God for it, and
right,
anytime I feel myself slipping a little bit, yeah, I get in that conversation, it's amazing how that can happen, and you ask for something that you think is almost impossible that God gives to you, and then it becomes easier for that to manifest itself as
right,
time goes by. It's something you really probably can't understand unless you go through it. And you've been through
yeah,
it, Coach, so you know what I'm talking about.
right. And well, and it's you know when you was talking about like how you was kind of surprised that Miss Chris isn't like completely healed, and which like during like I believe that like each season and stuff of your life and stuff like right now. Like my favorite verse right now is John 10:10. You know, is by His stripes we were healed because I
Right.
feel like the that like our world is sick right now. So, and that's been heavy on my heart. You know, it's um, like I pray and I meditate on that word, and it's like because I feel like with what the reach and stuff that we have with Deck Talk podcast and being able to have guys like yourself on here that we're able to reach a lot of people and being able to pray about the podcast and being able to like know that the world is hurting and we the only way it's going to get better is if we have God in it. And so right now, like in this part of my life in this season, like my favorite verse is John 10:10, and that's uh I mean, and it's important and like and it's funny like how to me like different parts of seasons in your life like how the your favorite Bible verse will change to kind of what's going on with your life and how you're seeing life and how God's working. um so what with that being said, what is your favorite Bible verse that you have? Because so one question I wanted to ask you that at ICAST this past year, but I never had the time to come up to you and be able to ask you.
Well, I get asked that question a lot, and and I'm not sure I have a favorite Bible verse. The one that I had inscribed on the back of my tournament jersey that we wore in the BASS and FLW tournaments was Philippians 4:4. I was thinking of Ephesians 3:20, which is one that I hang my hat on also. But
Right.
I've read the Bible completely through every year since I was 25 or 20. I have and as you said, as your life situations change, different verses will become your favorite. And I don't know that I can really have a
Pick
favorite,
one. Right.
but Philippians 4:4 says, "Rejoice in the Lord always," and that was just because uh, as I did personal appearances, at one time I was doing about 130 personal appearances a year plus 26 television shows and fishing all the tournaments I was fishing, but. And it was just something that would be people just see that on the back of your fishing jersey, and they might not even talk to you. They may just see you at a weigh-in or something, and you go walk by at a weigh-in, and they see that in there, and that's kind of a nice message that, irrespective of what's going on in your life, rejoice in the Lord always.
Right.
Two verses that I really kind of hang my hat on. One is Ephesians 3:20, which says that God has the power to do exceedingly abundantly more than you could ever ask or think of, and the other says the other verse that I really kind of tie with that is me get my mind a little bit clear right here, is all things work together for the good of those who
Yeah.
love God and are called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
And when you think that everything that happened to you is going to work together for your good, not man, it's not going to be good at the time. Maybe it may be really, really bad at the time, like a stroke or like a
Right.
daughter that the doctor tells you is not going to live to be a year old, or somebody stealing $300,000 out of your business, or
Right.
getting fired from a job, or on and on and on. Things that are bad that happen to us, losing a brother or sister or mother or father, I mean, on and on and on. But God will make those things work together for your good.
Right.
And then when you tie that together, that verse with Ephesians 3:20, that God has the power to do more than you could ever ask or think for. And for a redneck like me, that means that beyond my wildest imagination,
Yeah.
God has the power to do it more than I could
Yeah.
ever think of.
Yeah.
That's my wildest imagination. I think of is what that
Yeah.
means, and God has the power to do that. And when you tie those two together, and then you look at situations happen in your lifetime, and as you get into situations that are difficult or problematic, and you turn those over to God, and then you see the results, and you see things happen over the next few days or few months or few years where God works and turns that situation around. And then, like I said, all of a sudden you wake up 3 or 4 5 years down the line and you look, my gosh, I don't
Right.
know how that God made
Yeah.
that way, but He did. And then
Yeah.
when something else happens, you know that, well, just like the song says, I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. And
Right.
because you've seen it happen before.
Right.
And, the Bible tells us that we will gain wisdom with age. We don't get any smarter. We're just as smart. We know more now than we did when we was 5 years old, but we're not any smarter than we were when we was 5 years old. And
Right.
but we are wiser. We do gain wisdom with age, and wisdom is probably more important than intelligence.
Right.
And so when you have that wisdom and you've seen God act and you've seen God work and you've seen God do things in your life, becomes pretty easy to believe that Chris will walk again and that
Yeah.
she'll fit in.
Right.
And you realize that as Jesus walked the earth 2 or 3 different times in the Gospels, it says that he healed them all, not just the
Yeah.
ones that had a little faith or a lot of faith, or sometimes not even the ones that asked. He
Right.
healed them also, and it gives many examples. And so, by his stripes we are healed. True, and that has a lot of meanings and
Yeah.
infirmities as well as our sins. But the Bible and the New Testament in particular is full of instances where Jesus, maybe one dramatic thing like walking Lazarus out of the grave, but then he would have days and nights and 24-hour days where he would heal literally hundreds of people. He would heal
Yeah.
them all. He
Yeah.
would heal them all. And he has the power to heal them all.
Yeah. And I mean, and that is, I mean, it's so true. And that people, I, like when I'm sharing my faith and stuff like that, like I've had people come to me and ask me like how like they thought that I would when my daughter died, they're like, well, how come like God took your daughter to heaven? I said, nah, don't even speak that. I was like, because I told him, I was like, anything that steals, kills, and destroys is from the devil. And I mean, the
Right.
Bible flat out tells us. And I said, God wants us to live life and live life abundantly.
True.
And what abundantly is more than what, just like what you were just saying, is more than what we can even imagine. And if you just cast your burdens, like it says, cast your burdens to Him, and He's going to take care of you. And and I fully believe that. And we know with watching you over the years that you fully believe that as well. And with that being said, I want to say thanks to you personally, because especially over this past 33 months, we have seen and that how a husband is supposed to treat his wife. We
Yeah.
have seen how a man is supposed to treat their husband or to treat their family, and and I know that what happened with Miss Chris was devastating, but God showed that. And I don't know if you have realized that, but other people have seen that how a husband is supposed to be supposed to treat his wife just because of how the videos and stuff that you have done. And I want to say thank you
Yes.
for, because that's what we need, is the, because a lot of people don't haven't had that dad figure, and you showed people during this time what a husband's supposed to do, with a husband and a father are supposed to do during times of trouble. So thank you so much, Mr.
Yes,
Jimmy.
sir. Thank you.
Well, I don't know that I've done anything extra special, just doing what God intended for me to
Yeah.
do.
Right,
But you know, God has laid out plans for our lives um, that have bumpy roads in them,
yeah,
and he tells us he's going to, like I said, make all those things work out for your good. And
right,
there's reasons for things that happen. God will take those reasons. God will take, and then the devil controls a lot of this world. And I've
yeah.
mentioned in social media that I believe the devil caused that stroke. And I've had, people say, "Oh, the devil doesn't cause people to have strokes." Well, I don't know. When you read what the devil has the power of doing, he's a pretty powerful angel,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and an angel turned into a demon, but he was an angel,
right,
and so he's got power over this earth, and we can see the things every day. All you have to do is just turn on any news report, and you can see all of the things that the devil is doing to the chaos that's happening in this world, all over the world. And
yeah,
um, I was with the dealer meeting by video today with the White River Marine Group with its tracker boats and Ranger and Triton and Mako and Hatteras and all those brands that Bass Pro Shop and Cabela Johnny Morse owns, and in that deal they talked about all of the things that went on, and they had a dealer that they had a boat dealer, a tracker boat dealer that is in um, over in Uruguay jumped into my mind, but not Uruguay, but the country that Russia's attacking over there,
right.
Ukraine, and
Ukraine.
and they have a dealer in Ukraine, and that dealer appeared on there and telling how difficult it was, and he ended that was with may God help us,
Right,
and we see live war on television. We see live evil on television, and the I guess what is called a terror attack in on Israel back in October, whenever
right.
that was,
Yeah,
and atrocious things that you almost believe that mankind cannot uh, do against mankind.
right,
And we see people shoot people they don't even know in America almost every day, and but all things, but the things that they did over there in that attack, whether it's a war attack or a terror attack, I don't know what, but that are even go beyond what we could even believe would happen, and yet not only did they do that, they took video of it, put it on social media,
right.
and that's just how evil really is. And I think
Yeah.
that we think of good and evil, and we don't really realize how bad evil really is. But and in this world and in this country, there's a lot of really evil out there. I mean,
There.
real and and but there'll be a reckoning. There'll be a time when all that changes,
Yeah,
and it could be any day. You never know.
yeah. So let's let's talk a little bit uh, about your fishing career, and then we want to talk about also the television and stuff like that as well. How sorry, I got we got almost 1,600 people on right now, and I just got,
Oh, good.
and so I just got it going crazy. So, and it keeps on moving. Every time it moves, I catch it on the side of my eyes. so,
But
so
tell them to all to subscribe to the Catch a Better Life channel. That
yeah,
they want a better life in 2024.
that's it.
Those New Year's resolutions they made that some of them's already broken. Catch a Better Life on that channel. Tell
That's
them.
right. So definitely, y'all do need to check that out on YouTube and stuff. It's a daily devotional, and which again, I've got mine, and um, and it means the world to me to be able to have that devotion, and then also with you got little tips and stuff that's in there as well that is pretty phenomenal. Um, my dad asked, um, with the unbelievable schedule you keep, how do you prepare yourself for a daily routine? As an older angler, is there anything I can do to keep myself ready for the next trip on the water physically? Thank you, Mr. Jimmy, for the light you provide daily. Blessings to you and your family.
Oh, I appreciate that. I tell you, my buddy Toby Keith said Clint Eastwood told him, "Don't let the old man in." Well, Clint Eastwood is really getting away on up there, but don't let
Yeah.
the old man in. And when Toby told me that, Toby actually ended up writing a song about that. But I when he told me that, I said, man, that's a motto to live right there. Don't let the old man in. You know, I'm not as old as Bill Dance and Roland Martin, but I will change that front number to an 8 this coming summer. So I'm not really young anymore. I think I am.
Yeah.
But you know, we have just always. I think a big part of being able to stay active is just that right there, staying
Yeah.
active. I've had many friends that I went to high school and college with that are gone now. They're dead, and a lot of them retired when they're 50, 55 years old. And I'm 79, still doing 26 television shows. Well, actually 52 television shows, and you know, running 3 YouTube channels and Facebook and Instagram and all that other stuff. And I'm not doing but about 60 personal appearances a year, but that's still probably as many or more than most anybody in the fishing
Oh yeah.
industry is doing. And so we stay, you know, we just stay really really active, and we've just never known any other life but that. You know,
Right.
Chris and I got married, you know, right out of high school, and we just celebrated 60 years of marriage, which they tell me only 1% of the married couples in our country make it to that, and part of
Exactly.
it is just you have to live a long time to get there, and I think only 1/10 of 1% make it to 70. And I had somebody comment on my social media back when Chris and I went out and celebrated our 60th that she had an aunt and an uncle that was 74, 74. So both of those people had to be in their mid 90s or so,
Right.
maybe at least early 90s and probably mid 90s. And for a couple to live into their 90s is extraordinary. And to be able to put up with each other all that time, you know, it shows what real love really is. And it shows that commitment, you know, because
Yeah.
every marriage vow that there used to be. I know marriage vows are totally different nowadays in a lot of situations, but every marriage vows that happened back when in the you know when we got married, and probably most of them today still say till death do us part.
Yeah.
Although a lot of them, you know, really don't believe that, and you
Right.
know, and they also are also being united together, you know, under God, and
Right.
a lot of them. I guess that's left out of a lot of marriage ceremonies nowadays. But we meant it when we were teenagers, and we still mean it today.
Right.
Yeah,
Now.
a good buddy of ours, Dennis Crenshaw, is on, and Dennis said, "Hello, Mr. Houston," and
Hi, Dennis.
he also met you at ICAST and got a chance to get a picture with you. So he says it was real nice meeting you at ICAST. But he's actually a crappie guide in Lake Placid, which is
Yeah.
my old stomping ground. But he said very nice to meet you at ICAST as well. So
Yeah.
Well, the
Now.
Classic's going to be a good one again this year. The Classic will be at Grand Lake in Oklahoma,
yeah,
which is it's going to be good. And unfortunately, I'm only going to be there on Sunday. I'm usually on the Classic on Saturday and Sunday, and you know, after I quit fishing tournaments, you know, and I was at the Classic fishing quite a few times, so that was a lot of fun. But I never did win a Classic. I should have won a couple, 2 or 3 of them, but I got really close and would do something to mess up and ruin that ability to win. But anyway, yeah, I've got a really busy week that week. I work in speak at a deal on Thursday night in South Carolina, and then work a show there on Friday. And then when that show's over that night, I drive to I think 270 miles to West Virginia, and work a show there the next day, and then fly back to Tulsa and get back to Tulsa about midnight on Saturday night. But then I'll be at that classic on Sunday, which will be an
yeah.
exciting day.
Yeah. Well,
For sure.
hopefully we'll get to see you there because Norman and myself we're going to be part of the Bass Media, and
Oh,
so
fantastic.
hopefully we were able to do it last year in Knoxville, and it was a time of our life. It was
Oh, yeah, that,
phenomenal.
well, that was a great classic. That was a great classic and a great
Yeah.
crowd, and we had a lot of fun. We were there both Saturday and Sunday on that event, which we usually are. And I just had things on my calendar and did not have the Bassmaster Classic on there. And I did learn today that the Bass Pro Shop is a presenting sponsor of this year's
Yeah.
Bassmaster Classic.
Okay.
That's hot information. They just announced that. Well, they just actually finalized it today while we were
I was
having
about to
that
say it hasn't. I
video
haven't seen it
meeting.
out yet. Yeah.
No, no, they just they Johnny Morris brought it up there, and they will be. So he's one that's going to be a little upset at me not being there both Saturday and Sunday, but uh,
Yeah.
maybe maybe I can get in there. Maybe I can get in there a little earlier Saturday night if you'll come up here to West Virginia and fly me back to Tulsa. Johnny, I get in there for Saturday night, Johnny. Just be
Yeah.
ready when I get through to West Virginia.
Now speaking of the classic, how do you think it's going to be won this year?
Well, that is a great jerkbait time at Grand Lake. So there'll be a lot of fish caught on suspended jerkbaits. There's no doubt about it. But a lot depends on the weather. We've had such a mild winter. Our water temperatures are up a lot higher. We do have 5 days forecast here of below freezing for 5 days. And some of those days up at Grand Lake, it's going to get down, probably 5 or 6 degrees below zero until chill
Right.
temperature 10 or 15, 20 below zero. So it's going to drop that water temperature pretty dramatically up there. A swim bait will be good. One of the difference that they have now than they had the last time they had the classic at there, which I think that the last one they had, I think Edwin Evers won that.
Edwin's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Edwin's a buddy of
Mhm.
mine and just a really good fisherman. I love fishing with him. He's a lot of fun to fish with and extremely talented, extremely intelligent about the game. But anyway, is we have live scopes now. Everybody's got forward facing sonar and that is the time of the year where a lot of those bigger fish, giant fish, are suspended, and it's when most of the really big double-digit fish are caught in Oklahoma and Texas. 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16 pound fish are caught, and we've learned where those fish are, and they were basically impossible to catch without a live scope because they're out in big areas around points down close to the dam, and they may be suspended 10 or 15 feet deep, 5 foot deep over 20 foot of water, or 10 foot deep over 100 foot of water. And you could go down there and probably throw for a week and not get a lure close to one. And not only that, you had to have the lure up above the bait of the fish instead of down below it. And so you could even luckily throw by one, but have your lure below it and they don't ever hit it.
Yeah.
And so that will play a part of that. And a suspended jerk bait is a bait that they can run. And if we don't really get a lot of rains in February or early March, uh, that lake will be fairly clear. And you can a fish. I mean, he could be suspended. 18, 20 foot deep and still come up and bite a suspended jerkbait that's running half that, 10 foot up over his head.
Right.
So
What do
that's a good possibility there. And but again, if we get a lot of rain and gets up in the bushes, win it on a jig or a spinner bait.
Yeah. And
It's
that's
what,
late
what
in March, isn't it? Around the 20th or something like
the
that.
is the
24th.
22nd,
Yeah, that's what I
24th?
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I knew it was really late. So, yeah, fish could be shallow. Could be a lot of big fish shallow there. So,
Now,
uh,
what's your prediction, Jimmy, to win the Bassmaster Classic this year on Grand Lake? What's your prediction per day? Do you think it's going to take to win it?
well, it gets more difficult as the tournament goes on, obviously, but there's a good likelihood there'll be some 23, 24 pound stringers,
You
and
think it's going to take that per day, or you think it's going to decrease by
it
Sunday?
it generally decreases a little bit. I remember that tournament. Jason Christie won that tournament, and when Lucy ate, had $15,000 worth of a $30,000 check, and that particular tournament was in August, but the it was 100 degrees, but we came some big rains and the water came up, got in the bushes, and actually, Jason and I ended up catching a fish up in the bushes, and you couldn't get a bite in those bushes in practice, but once that water came up in the bushes, it was a whole new ball game, and that will happen down there, and if it does, but in that tournament. I caught 30 fish, 30 keepers the first day of that tournament, and had 23, 24, 25 pounds, and Jason Christie had about the same. But I caught 30 keepers, and a lot of those fish were over 3 pounds. And by the last day of the tournament, I think I scraped out 16 or 17 pounds, and had a hard time catching five. And by the last day, there was only 10 people fishing, and I didn't have any competition in my water. And the first 2 days there was a lot. First day there wasn't many, but second day a lot of people felt like I needed help catching those fish, so they come in here and fish with me. But once you cut back to
Funny how that
20, I
works.
think there was only one or two, and 10 there was nobody but me. But so maybe 23, 24 pounds to win, and then whoever can catch a 20-pound stringer the second day and 16, 17, 18 pounds the third is probably going to win it.
Yeah. And it's going to be. I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be just as heck of a show as it was in Knoxville this
Oh, it will.
past year.
It will.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, uh,
BASS knows how to put on a Bassmaster Classic. They have big crowds, and it's a live weigh-in where you get to look at the fish, and it's just you pull into that. It's exciting. I fished quite a few classics, and it's exciting to pull into that Coliseum and have five nice fish in that live well.
yeah,
It's exciting when you pull in there and have one or two, and you try to figure out how to keep smiling and when you feel like crying and try to entertain the crowd and because most of the classics that I fished, they only took 24 people out of 300 people that would fish the tournaments. We had 300 people fishing the tournaments, and only the top 24 got to go to the Bassmaster Classic for the year. And so it was really difficult to qualify for that, much more difficult than it is nowadays, where they have such a small field. And that small fields are probably both good and bad. I mean, and I understand that Major League Fishing cut their field back this year even less than it already was. It was already a small field of about 80, and
right.
I don't remember I don't know what they cut back to, but I know several of the fishermen have been a little unhappy about that. But um, it would be better if more people could play at that top level. I mean, that's just a
Yeah.
personal opinion. And I
Right.
would rather fish against 80 fishermen or 50 or three
Mhm.
than I would 300. I'll admit
Right.
that without a doubt. And so it's better for the guys that gets to play. But it's just such a great game, the tournament game, and it's just such a great game that there just should be more people be allowed to play at the top levels. In most of the major sports, there's a whole lot more people play at the top level, even in golf, which
Right.
is still an individual sport like fishing. There's a lot more people get to play at the top level, and now they have two major tours, so even more people get to play. And we seem to be going the other way in bass fishing, which I think is bad. And I know so many of these, particularly younger tournament fishermen, and some of the guys that are older that have worked their fanny off to get up close to or get to fish in that top deal, but maybe cannot make that top. Like in BASS, it's about 100, and a
Right.
few of those spots go to like people like me or Larry Nixon and Jay Ellis
Right.
and Roland. I mean, we can just have our spot back there if we wanted without having to requalify for it. And I may go back and do that someday. I mean, they keep
Yeah.
trying to get me to, and it'd be fun to go play a year with them anyway. But
Yeah.
uh, but anyway, it'd be nice if more people could play at that top level. And I don't fish tournaments anymore, but I just think it'd be better for a lot of the people out there playing the game. And there's people that were fishing at that top level that are not going to get to this year,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's and really honestly through no fault of their own.
Mm-mm.
If you don't requalify, and you have to be in a certain deal to requalify, but in some of them, but if no fault of your own, and then they changed the structure around where less people are fishing, and I don't know how many they cut off of Major League Fishing, but there's several I understand.
I think it's like 35 they cut.
Well, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't think it was that many, but that's a
Yeah.
lot.
The,
It
Places.
the
is.
35 cuts going in is going to be 2025. They're cutting down to I think what is it 35
Yeah,
anglers in
something like yeah,
2025,
Yeah.
yeah.
something like that.
Oh my
So
gosh. Well, it's a difficult way to make a living anyway. It was difficult when 300 people were allowed to play in the BASS tournaments, and then there was not an FLW or an MLF then. there was other organizations around though that were professional tournaments, like American Angler and National Bass Association and Project Sports Incorporated, and a lot of the really good BASS anglers came from those other organizations.
Yeah.
Right.
And they would win enough money to be able to pay the entry fees or whatever, and I think also it probably hurts the advertising as well also when you have less people play at that top level.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's I mean NASCAR, even you got 42, but then you got another big professional level that race
Right
on
behind. Yeah.
Saturdays. They don't race on Sundays, but race on Saturdays, and those are still big boys in the game. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and and so I don't know, and I think things will change, and sometimes the changes are excellent, but they're not excellent for everybody, and you'll never have changes that are perfect for everybody. But
Yeah.
I'd sure like to see a lot more people get to play at that top level.
Oh
One
yeah.
of the changes that I really, I mean, I didn't really understand why they done it back in the day. I kind of know why they done it, but I really didn't understand the meaning behind it. Back when they used to have co-anglers at the elite at the BASS level and the FLW level. But if you think about it, a lot of the pros today actually started on the back of the boat as a co-angler on the pro tour, and that's how they actually got their feet wet to
Oh,
become who they are.
many of them did, yeah. Oh,
Look at Scott Martin. Scott Martin was a co-angler on the FLW tour before he actually, uh, got to or became a pro, where he, was on the boater side. So
oh, he
there's
was.
a
In fact,
lot. Yeah,
one tournament at Okeechobee. Roland Martin, when they got down to the final 10, Roland Martin was in sixth place, and Scott was in sixth place on the co-angler. And they
yeah,
actually fished together that day, and Scott beat
Oh
his
cool.
dad that day.
yeah. And
And
so a
that's
lot of
right.
the
I
pros.
fished that tournament,
I
as a matter
mean,
of fact. Yeah.
yeah, and that's how they kind of became who they are today. Is they got to actually fish as co-anglers behind some of the best in the world, and who knows where they would be today if they didn't get that opportunity. But they took that
Well,
away.
you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Mhm.
I hated to see him do away with the co-anglers.
Yeah,
One of the deals on all of that is the organizations have acquiesced a lot of times to a handful of fishermen, almost like you know political organizations or
yeah,
whatever. And there were a few guys out there that didn't want co-anglers, and they were big name guys. And from a fishing standpoint, I'd rather have a marshal sitting back there sleeping in
yeah.
the back of the boat or eating bonbons. I mean,
Oh
I'd
yeah,
rather have that. But for the sport, the good of the sport, I think the
yeah,
co-anglers was much better than having marshals. I think having larger fields is much better. And one of the things, I fished tournaments for 54 years at the national level, and one of the things that I did all of the way through that is I always in looking at in meetings, we had meetings about rules and changes and what we was going to do the following year. I always simply looked at what was better for the sport, and I tried to do what was better for the sport, not necessarily what is better for Jimmy Houston, because
Right.
if the sport gets better, I'm going to be fine.
yeah,
And but so many of these guys look at things selfishly, and the ones that push for co-anglers were looking at it selfishly, and they're 100% right. They're a lot better off. I mean,
Right.
I've had co-anglers, catch bigger strings of fish. I've had co-anglers, throw up at a stump I was getting ready to throw up and catch 5 6 pounders and that I would have caught, and on and on and on. But for the sport, for the betterment of the sport, it's better to have the co-anglers, and for the betterment of the sport, it's better to have a larger field, I think. And
yeah,
and and I can understand, and they changed the name to the Bass Elites. That folks wanted to be elite, and in order to be elite, well, they were cutting down, they were cutting down the field. So, you know,
Yeah.
but I would like to see more people be able to play at the top level. I would like to see co-anglers at the top level also. I mean, there's several things, and I quit tournament fishing because they put a rule in where Chris could not fish with me in tournament practice. And I waited until December before the tournament's going to start in January to make that final decision, and they just kept pushing me about it. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to fish them
Right.
because I thought it would take a lot of fun out of the tournaments to practice those 3 days alone and
Right.
all the conditions that we practice in." But in addition to that being dangerous, which is dangerous for everybody, whether you're my age or whether you're 25 years old, to be out there practicing by yourself. But that again was another selfish thing that some of those younger fishermen was looking at, is that they felt like for Chris to be in the boat with me, or Rob Kilby's wife to be in the boat with him, or
Was an advantage.
yeah, or all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lot of wives fishing the tournaments, and some of them, like Rob Kilby's wife, had never been able to go fishing with him in tournaments until just the last few years. And Rob quit also when that happened. Rob Kilby quit
Right.
the tournament, and I would have had to quit, the following year anyway in 21 when Chris had the stroke. But that's the reason I quit tournaments. But again, I just look at things at what's best for the tournaments, and now that I'm not fishing, I can look at that probably even with a little bit clearer lens
Right.
than when I was fishing. But there was a lot of things that I voted for and brought up in meetings that was not necessarily good for Jimmy Houston, but was good for the betterment of the sport.
The
And
sport. Yeah.
and I just think that we make the sport better, it's going to be better for all of us.
Yeah.
Going back, excuse me, going back in the archives a little bit, Jimmy. And I often think about this era back in the day, and I know a little bit of the story behind it, and I know Ray Scott actually went public and he was against it. Do you remember back when BASS went to half the points was they actually put on a boat race, was part of the BASS tournament at the time. Do you remember that, Jimmy? Or
Oh yeah,
uh,
oh
I've
yeah,
looked,
I remember.
I've looked for history. I've looked for YouTube stuff on it. There's nothing to be found anywhere on the internet. But and I know Ray Scott a couple times. Of course, the founder of BASS went public where he was again. Could you tell us a little bit? I don't know how much you know, or could you tell us a little bit of a backstory on that? Because Ray Scott was actually against that because putting boat racing in the equation.
I'm trying to look for a cord to charge my phone. My battery's
They
falling.
Oh,
actually had they
no.
actually had a professional
And I can't.
boat
I
course.
can't. I can't find the cord. I'll lay it back. I'll lay it back
They
down here.
actually had a professional boat course racer set the course up for them.
Well, that's exactly true, and most of the guys really like that. I didn't like it too much, and it didn't go over big at all. From a safety standpoint, it wasn't a very good idea because we sometimes get a little dangerous out there anyway,
Yeah,
and without racing. But when you add racing to it, and we weren't racing during the tournaments, that was a deal that was held before a day before. The other thing that Ray Scott did, you can go back a little bit further, and Ray, I went to his memorial uh, in uh, in Montgomery, and Ray, I've got 4 hours of video of Ray and I sitting at his house talking for 4 hours about all the early days of bass fishing, and we don't have any idea what to do with that video, but it's some memorable stuff.
Right.
And uh, but another thing that Ray did that was pretty amazing is about to get some power hooked up here to my phone. But another thing that Ray did that was pretty amazing that you might not remember is he actually wanted to have fly rod tournaments. He wanted to do fly rod tournaments.
Ah, cool.
Yeah,
really.
and we fished a couple of those fly rod tournaments, and the very first one was at Bull Shoals over by Flippin, Arkansas, where Ranger
Right.
boats were made, and we had one day, and all these big fly rod fishermen came in here, Lefty Cray, and the real well-known fly rod fishermen that they wrote about in Outdoor Life and Sports Afield and all that. That's way back before any social media, but they came in there, and they were, and of course we did it because they were paying money. They paid top 10 places won money, so we got fly rods, and I had people send me flies and all this, and learned how to use a fly rod, and that was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun, and we have this tournament in March on Bull Shoals Lake in Flippin, Arkansas, and it snowed about 10 or 12 inches. And I mean, our fly rods were covered up with snow in the boat, and you couldn't catch a fish on a fly if you were 1,000 times better than Lefty Kreh. And but being bass fishermen, bass fishermen have a way to figure out how to catch a fish just about no matter what. If we have to dive in the water, catch it by hand, we'll do it. And so most of the rules that had been made in bass fishing over the year was things that we figured out to do that was probably inappropriate, maybe bordering on being illegal. And so they would change the rule around, but we would figure out how to catch them. And what we did in those tournaments, trolling is not allowed in bass tournaments. There's no trolling in bass fishing, but you can, as long you can run your trolling motor wide open if you want. That's fine. You just can't start that big engine and troll. And so what some of us learned how to do, we just put a little crankbait on and take our fly rod and stick it out there, and we get it close to the bank, and we turn our trolling motor on and just drag that little crankbait down there about 7 or 8 feet or 10 feet with our fly rod, and we caught fish. And so we beat the really good fly rod fishermen. We beat them quite a bit. We didn't know anything about double loops and all that kind of stuff. We just tie a little crawfish colored crankbait on and pull it down by a bluff and catch a bass. So
well, we
that
get
didn't work out too well. That didn't that fly rod deal, and the racing didn't either. And the racing, the fishermen liked. We liked it. It was fun.
yeah.
We had that. We like bass boats that go 70 miles an hour. Johnny Morris just introduced a tracker aluminum boat with rounded back ends on it, not down like the boats have always been.
Mm-hmm.
That's is running over 70 miles an hour.
Holy cow!
70 miles an hour. They just and a prototype boat is about
Wow.
all I got right now. I don't know. We'll have it sometime 24. I can't wait. I can't wait to.
Man,
I mean,
I
I've
know
got
I
I've
love
got
my aluminum
150
boat.
horsepower motors on my 195 tracker, and
Yeah,
it runs pretty good. But with this one, more than likely, that's a 200. Well, it's got to be a 250 horsepower Mercury on there.
right.
I can't
Now
wait.
we've had a couple of comments asking where did kissing the fish come from?
I wish I knew. I really, yeah, I really don't know. But we got the whole world kissing fish. So I mean, we
Yeah.
get pictures every day on social media, people kissing fish. I actually got a picture one time from Vladimir Putin kissing a fish sent to me. Now, I want to say right now, publicly, I do not know Vladimir Putin. I have not colluded with him on anything whatsoever. I did vote for Donald Trump, but I don't know Vladimir. He just loves to kiss the fish.
Right.
But I don't know. I kind of think it probably started with one of either two things. I mean, I didn't even realize it was doing it for a while, but it probably catching a fish that really needed in a tournament that might have being the fish that I thought, well, I made the money in the tournament, or I made the top 10, or I won the tournament, or whatever. Or the other part, and probably really was where it started, if I really knew where it started, was in the early days of television, we hardwired. We didn't have wireless microphones like we do now,
Right.
and Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff like we have now. We hardwired to a big recording deck. And so we had a big recording deck that we had a wire that run down our shirt, down our pants leg, run back to a big old connector about 6 inches long on each side, and a big chrome connector. And we drug that thing around all day long fishing. And in the early days, we had to have an opening to a close, the middle of a close, and we had to have a close, which we still have to have all that. But with the close, we decided that we wanted, and we've never ever staged one fish in 47 years of national television, but that we had to catch a really quality fish, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds to close. And so we'd
Right.
have plenty of fish caught to get a good show, but we need the closing fish. And sometimes it was all but impossible to catch that big fish. And so I was so thankful that I'd catch one that's a good quality fish that would allow to do a close of the show and wrap up the day and get that stinking microphone off of me. That I probably was so thrilled I started kissing the fish, and then somehow people started asking me about kissing the fish, and I'm not really sure I even realized that I was doing it, or there was a big deal. Maybe I was doing it more than I thought it was. I don't know, but I think that's probably where it started. And so when they came out with wireless microphones, I thought I died and gone to heaven. Man, that was great. That's great. Now
well,
we use these little Bluetooths on our phone
Yeah.
yeah.
that cost $39, and they're
Yeah.
amazing. We used to shoot with $60,000 cameras, which would be about $120,000 cameras now. Now
Yeah.
we shoot television shows with $8,000, $9,000 cameras, and we slip in videos with we shoot with an iPhone, which is
Yeah.
$1,500.
Right.
So
well,
yeah,
well, we've
the game's
had you
changed a
on.
lot.
It
Thank
has. It has. Well, we've had you on right at an hour. And I told Sherry we're going to try to keep you right at an hour. Is usually what we try to do, but we got two more questions, and
Keep the
I,
answers down to 30 minutes each.
yeah, I mean, we can talk fishing all night long with you, Mister Jimmy. But
Colin, radio people love to talk to me because that some of them say they just ask me a question, then they go eat, grab a hamburger and a Coke and some fries and come back 30 minutes later and say that was a great answer, Jimmy.
great answer.
Thank you for being on.
That's the one thing about people that love talking fishing is you start talking fishing before you know it, you've been on for an hour. You think it's been about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
mercy! Well, I told Chris, I said this is going to be an hour though,
yeah.
she's laying down taking a nap, so I said it'll be an hour before I'm able to get you up and cook dinner for you. So
So,
yeah, we're gonna
well,
have some barbecue ribs tonight, so that sounds good,
Oh
don't
man,
it?
that sounds
man,
good.
we're
Barbecue ribs, twice baked potatoes. Oh boy,
well,
Oh
we're
man.
heading that way for dinner.
All
yeah.
right.
Well, come on.
See you in about 8
Butter
hours.
pecan, bluebell butter pecan ice cream too.
Oh
Also,
wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So what's
so
the two questions?
the two questions we're going to ask. I have to. I mean, because we had a list of things that I wanted to ask you, and Norman wanted to ask you, but once we get started talking, we most of the time we don't get to half the questions that we wanted to ask. But I want to know, where did the love of a spinner bait come from? Like, I mean, because you have to be one of the best persons on a spinner bait that I have ever seen.
That is a really great question, and it's really it's really there was an individual here in Oklahoma named Joe Wells, who's a very good friend of mine. He'd since died, but not too awful long ago, really. But we were fishing the state championships here in Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a Oklahoma State Championship where you qualify on various lakes, and like the top two or top three at the individual tournaments qualify for the state championship, and I won that a couple, two or three times. I was fishing on Lake Hudson, which is the lake right below Grand Lake, where the Classic will be this year. And Joe Wells and I was fishing in the same area, and I was using a lure that is called a wiggly. It's a lazy eye wiggly jig crawler. I think it
Yeah,
was a jig on is a spoon on a jig that wiggled and went down, and it
actually,
had
yeah,
a
better.
single hook on it and had a worm on it. It's a rig deal. And the only thing is, if you catch several big fish on it, the spoon part of it would break off from the jig
Right.
and you would lose the fish. So if you caught several big ones, you had to put you a brand new one on, and we of course, didn't have much money to buy very many lures back then, so it was really a bad deal. But him and I was fishing the same area, and up in this one creek. There were only two boats up there, him and I caught a pretty good string of fish, but he smoked me. I finished second, but he beat me by like 7 or 8 pounds, and he just caught all of his fish were big ones, and so we get in that evening, and I told him, I said, God, I don't know how you caught all those big fish, and he said, "Oh, I just caught him on a spinnerbait." And I said, "Well, I fished a spinnerbait some. I couldn't get a bite on the spinnerbait." And he said, "Well, yeah, I just, maybe just fishing some better spots." And I said, "We was fishing all the same spots. I saw all that." And but he wouldn't tell me anything, and we was hanging around there, and I was trying to learn something, I mean,
Mhm.
and so I didn't drink, and I don't drink, but I knew that Joe did because he's real hot and everything, and somebody said something about it'd be nice to have a good cold beer, and so I went and bought a 6 pack of beer at the little the marina there. I bought a 6 pack of beer, and I said, Joe, I said, you want a beer? And he said, oh man, I'd love to have a beer. So he got a beer, and so he drank about four. He drank about four of them beers, and I kept talking to him about that. And I said, well, you just how deep were you fishing that spinnerbait anyway? Most of the fish were only 3 or 4 feet deep, and anyway, so he finally got in his boat and he picked up a rod and reel, and he said, here's the way I was catching them, and he threw this spinnerbait out there, and this is like back in the late '60s. Threw this spinnerbait out there and he rolled it across the top of the water, leaving a wake. And I said, they come up there and hit that bait like that? And he said, yeah. And I said, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "That's amazing." I fished the spinnerbait a lot, but we slow rolled them. Everybody slow rolled. We
Right.
used spider spinnerbaits and made out of rubber bands and all that kind of stuff. And so I said, "Wow, that's really something." And he drank all the beers, and so I get back home, and Chris said, "Golly, that guy, that Joe Wells guy waxed your tail, didn't he?" And I said, "Yeah, but I know how he caught him." And so we go out the next day and put the boat in the water at 10 kilo. And I go out there and I take my spinner baits and I'm whipping them out across the top of the water. And she said, "Them fish not going to bite that spinner bait." And I said, "Oh, yeah, they will." And pretty soon one jumped up and grabbed it on top of the water. And it's like falling in love.
Oh.
Done better, maybe. and, and so I was fishing that spinnerbait up on top of the water, and not hardly anybody was doing it. And then I was fishing a tournament in December or March, I guess it was, with a spinnerbait, and I didn't wear raincoats in the early years of tournament fishing. If it's cold or hot, I just fish. I didn't care. And
Right.
get
That's
so
it.
kept fishing, and it was snowing, and I got so cold and wet. And I finally sat down in front of the boat just trying to stay warm. And I was trying to throw my spinnerbait out there sitting down. And I developed underhand casting. So I had, a way that most people did not know to fish a spinnerbait. And I was throwing underhanded, which allowed me to make a lot more casts than anybody else. I had an advantage there for quite a while till everybody learned what I was doing. And, I could, and still yet today, we've won most of the casting contests, and I learned how to cast a lot more accurately than probably most of the guys that I've had to compete against throughout the years. And most of the younger guys can't cast very accurately at all. When I was 16, Virgil Ward and Glenn Andrews and Jim Rogers and Joe Krieger and those guys were fishing that World Series of sports fishing, and they fished and stayed at my dad's resort on Lake Tenkiller, and I guarded their boats. And those guys would take me fishing while they practiced like 8 or 10 days on 10 killer. And nearly all of the very best ones asked me to go fishing with them. But they were trying to find my spots. I didn't know that. I thought, wow, this is great. A
Right.
10-year-old kid get to fish with Virgil Ward, Jim Rogers, Glenn Andrews, maybe the best fisherman ever was, and Glenn Causey and Jim Rogers and more. Roy Martin out of Panama City, Florida, more saltwater world records than any man alive has ever had. And I got to go fishing with these guys. And the one thing I noticed is they could throw that bait over there and get like a couple, 2 or 3 inches away from the bank. And I thought, I got to learn how to throw that way. And so from 16 on, I was working on casting accuracy. And in last year's World Series, World Fair and Bass Pro Shop in Springfield, I won the casting contest there. And I was defending champion from about 5 years ago because first time they've had a World Fair in a while. And
Right.
I got down to Ott Defoe and Ott's an extremely good thrower.
Yeah.
But Roland Martin was in those finals, Randy Howell, about 8 or 9 of us in the finals, and got down to Ott and I won it again, at my age. So I can still throw it accurately. Not as accurately as I probably could 10 years ago, but I can still throw it pretty good.
Yeah.
But accuracy is one of the most important things about spinnerbait fishing. And understanding vibration and colors and all of that kind of stuff is really important. But we brought out the red man back to the red man spinnerbait with Lucky Strike,
Right.
and they can't hardly build enough of them at Lucky Strike right now. And it's an old spinner. It's a spinnerbait I won the 1976 and 1986 Angler of the Year title on. A short arm spinnerbait, a rubber skirt, one single Colorado blade. A retro spinnerbait is really what it is, and it doesn't quite have a retro price. I think it retails for $6.95, which is really kind of inexpensive for a spinnerbait these
Right.
days. But I sold it for $1.25 when I sold Sam Walton spinnerbaits when he had 13 stores, and then he retailed them for $1.25. And I made 50 cents off each one of them, so I was doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I couldn't build them fast enough. But yeah, I'm in love with the spinnerbait. I still am. I would still rather throw it than any other bait. I love to see those bass come up and try to jerk that rod out of your hand, and
Yeah.
and I catch them on top. Would run the spinnerbait on top of the water in snowstorms times. And some of the tournaments that I did exceptionally well, and some of those years when I'd be in the top 10 almost every tournament and win those Angler of the Year titles, probably 80 or 90% of the fish were on that spinnerbait running up on top of the water, like Joe Wells after a few beers showed me how to do. So, just kind of opportunistic at the right time. And
Right.
it's still to me the most fun bait to use. It's not the best bait to use all the time. And
Right.
I've done a lot of sinking on spinnerbaits as well in
Yeah.
tournaments when I should
Yeah.
have been
Jan
I know
Muse
how to
said,
throw all the other baits, and I know how to fish them,
right.
but I've been married to a spinnerbait for more than I've been married to my wife, and that's been married to her for 60 years. I'm still
Yeah,
married to that spinnerbait.
yeah. Jan Muse says the spinner bait is the most underutilized bait.
It probably is nowadays, and the amazing thing, Kevin Van Dam retired from the BASS this year, but on the last tournament, he almost won that tournament on spinnerbait,
Yeah,
and that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. I sent him a note the before the last day of the tournament, and told him, I said, win that sucker, and he didn't quite win,
yeah,
but Kevin won a lot of what he's won, and I would probably put him or Ricky Clunn. If I was to rank the fishermen, and these guys are all great friends and great,
yeah,
great fishermen. I don't think you can rank them any way you want them, and they're still probably first, second, and third would
yeah,
be Roland, and then either Ricky Clunn or Kevin
yeah,
second. I mean, they both have won for different reasons, and Ricky was winning before Kevin started playing, and she's still winning and playing
yeah.
after Kevin's. Kevin told me one time when I think I'd fished tournaments for 50 years. He said, "You don't ever have to worry about me beating that record." He said, "I'm going to quit way before I fish them 50 years," and he did. But what a great tournament fisherman and what a great
Yeah,
individual Kevin is, and Ricky
Yeah.
Klein also. I mean, all those guys, and Roland Martin has been. Of course, I've fished and hunted with him for 30 or 40 years. So, when he lived here in Oklahoma, we became really good friends. And Roland's probably taught me more about bass fishing than anybody. And if I have an idol in bass fishing, someone that I look up to and respect above everyone else,
yeah,
it probably is Roland. And maybe the next one was probably Bill, even though Bill didn't have quite the tournament career as a Ricky
right,
Clunn or a Kevin Van Dam or even some of the younger fishermen. Just because the kind of individual and the kind of great friend that he is. And in business, I probably look up to Johnny Morse more than anybody.
yeah,
And I look up to a lot of great CEOs of great companies like O'Reilly's and Shell and people that I've fished with and friends with. But I probably look up to Johnny Morse in business more than anybody in the whole
right,
country.
right. Well, Norman, let's knock out this last question for Mr. Jimmy.
Yeah, and this last question, Jimmy, is kind of became a staple of how we end the show. And actually, you've been the answer to this question, I think, a couple of different times. But if you were to have one person on your boat, Jimmy, and this person could be passed away or still with us, who would that person be that you would want to fish with for the day and why?
It's somebody that I haven't fished with.
E-
Uh,
e-
you
Either
you
way,
you could have fished with him before, but this person could be passed away or still with us. And who would it be, and why would you want him to fish with you for the day?
If you look back to people that's not with us anymore, it'd probably be Ray Scott.
mhm,
And the people that's with us now, and I fish with him a lot, several times every year, is still Roland Martin. Roland and I have so much fun, and the great thing that I love about fishing with Roland, if you put him in the back of the boat and then you start catching more fish than he does, he will whine like a baby. It's like, and I mean, the greatest fisherman of all time back there griping about, well, how am I supposed to catch what? You're catching every fish, you're hitting every good spot. You're doing this, you're doing that. And I tell him, well, get your fatty up here and run the trolling motor. Let me sit back here in the back of the boat. Oh,
right.
no, I'm fine back here. I'm fine. But you need to leave me more water.
I
But he's a good one, and
yeah,
he's taught me so much over the years. He's probably taught me more accidentally than he thought he was teaching me. And but another fisherman we talk about that was one of my closest friends, like a brother, is Ricky Green, and that's a name from the past. But Ricky Green qualified for the first 13 Bassmaster Classics. I spoke at his funeral and carried him to the grave. But if I could fish with somebody today that's passed on to heaven, it'd be Ricky
yeah,
Green. And one of these days I'll be there and get to fish with those guys again. That's the
yeah.
cool thing.
Yeah,
That's
a
true.
little quick, a little quick. This is kind of a little funny deal. Scotty, one of his Scott Martin, one of his television shows, and this goes back quite a ways. One of his challenges, he had his two boys on as a challenge, and the two
Yeah.
boys were actually fishing against each other in the challenge to win a brand new fishing rod. And this is how far back it goes. His two sons, I think, were like 13 or
Yeah.
14, somewhere in that
Yeah.
age group. But anyway, one of them, I can't remember which boy it was, caught something like a 5 or 6 pounder, and it was leading the challenge at the time. And Scott goes, "Okay, son, hold him up to the camera as close as you can, and be like Grandpa and say that's a 10 pounder right there."
That's
And
true. That's so true.
I laughed my tail off when he done that. That's funny as heck. But yeah, that's a 10 pounder right there, boys. Oh, son.
I got to tell you though, Roland really believes they're bigger than they really are. He's really not lying. I thought he was lying for a long time, but we had a tournament on Rayburn, and we were well. Actually, I finished second, and he finished third in the tournament. And a local guy down there, uh, Baker. Baker. What was Baker's first name? I can't remember right now. But anyway, won the tournament. I finished second. Roland finished third. But we were really close going into that final day of the tournament. 3-day tournaments back then, and we happened to pull up and park beside each other on the bank. And I asked him. I said, "What do you got, Roland?" He said, "I got 25 pounds, easy." I said, "God, dog, you're going to go around me." And he said, "What do you got?" And I said, "I got maybe 20, maybe 21." And I said, "But yeah," I said, "You'll go around me. There's no doubt about it." So we get our fish bagged up, and we start walking up there to the scales. And I looked over at Roland's fish, and I said, "Roland," I said, "You don't have 25 pounds of bass." "Oh yeah, I do. I do." I said, "No, you don't." I said, "Look at my bag." I said, "I got more than you got." And he said, "Holy cow, I thought you told me you only had 21 pounds." I said, "That's about what it is, 21 pounds." And he said, "No, man." He said, I mean, he believed it. And then we're getting ready to put the fish on the scales. It's just him and I talking. He's not trying to impress anybody. He puts his fish on the scales and weigh about 19 pounds. So then, for then, every time somebody would say, "Oh yeah, Roland holds a 3 pounder up or a 2 pounder because it's a 5." He believes it's 5. He believes it, and I fished with him hundreds of days. He believes it. So
Yeah,
he, in Roland's defense, he's being honest. He just big eyes. I mean, he just big eyes them, but he believes it.
Oh,
But
man.
he does know how to hold them close to the camera. Yeah, he does know how to do that. Also, anybody ought to do that though. You ought to do that just taking a picture of your 5 pounder that you catch or your 3 pounder that you catch, and you want to prove to your wife that you actually caught some because you turn them all back and you go home and tell her you caught 14 fish, and she said, "Where are they?" And he said, "Oh, I turned them all back." And why'd you even go? But so you do want to take a picture of your fish. You do want to hold them close to the camera. That's right. That's right.
right.
Good
Well,
advice.
yes, we have hit almost 2,000 viewers during this hour and 17 minutes, Mr. Jimmy. And
Fantastic. Be sure to let everybody know. We got 3 YouTube channels.
yeah,
Jimmy and Chris Hughes' Twin Eagle Ranch. That's where the pet deer and the deer that we raise and the wild deer. And we have videos basically every day on there. We have the Catch a Better Life channel that you mentioned, which we post those at 5 o'clock Central Time every morning. It's got a fishing tip, a scripture from the Word of God, a devotional built around fishing. Probably with Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, probably have 30, 40,000 people a day hear that devotional. We do have the book. You can follow along with it
yeah,
if you want, but you can watch it on any of those deals. And then Jimmy Houston Outdoor Fishing, which is we just started that YouTube channel. We just actually spun it off of the ranch channel because more people were interested in seeing the deer. So we just started a new fishing channel and where we could get our fishing stuff in. And we do 1,000 videos a year for social media. So that's a lot.
that's a lot. That
It's
That's
a
is a
lot.
lot. Yeah.
But,
So, well,
but
Mr.
we've
Jimmy,
got a lot of people on there. We're over 600,000 people on
yeah,
Facebook. That's another, if you don't use YouTube, Facebook is
yeah,
Jimmy Houston Outdoors, all capital letters. So
yeah,
we'd like to have some of those 2,000 people get on there.
yes,
The Catch
and
a
yeah.
Better Life channel has only got 27,000 people. They're some of the finest people in the world.
yeah,
They'll
and we
pray with you. They'll pray for you.
yeah,
Guaranteed.
that means a lot.
Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll put a link to all your uh,
Appreciate
the stuff on as a in the description down in the bottom once we get done. But Mr. Jimmy, thank you so much for coming on. It was
Yeah.
a blessing to be able to have you on
Yes, it was,
here
John. Thank
and
you.
pick your brain. And um, hopefully, we'll see you here in March at the Classic. And if not, I'm definitely going to run into you at ICAST if you're going to be down in
We'll see you in
ICAST.
Orlando at
Yeah,
ICAST.
definitely be there. Taking care of Toby Keith at ICAST.
Yes.
We'll definitely see you there.
So,
You
Mr.
bet.
Jimmy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank
Appreciate
y'all.
it.
Appreciate
Yes,
y'all.
sir.
Y'all doing a
Yeah.
great job. Keep it up.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
sir.
much.
All right, guys. Later.
All right.
Later.